Well, but first, Anthony Albanese certainly hasn't yet lost the election, but his campaign is in a lot of trouble. Most telling is the consistently sceptical attitude of the media pack that thinks there's blood in the water, even prompting his old foe Bill Shorten to warn today, don't underestimate Scott Morrison, and yes, you too can lose the unlosable election like me. In Melbourne today, the opposition leader went down the only path Labor knows when they're in trouble. In case of emergency, break glass. Talk about Medicare. But like yesterday, all the media wanted to talk about was his fitness for office. Also telling is today's Financial Review front page flagging a fundamental revamp in the Labor leader's campaign style. Now, to me, this is real echoes of the real Julia moment from the 2010 campaign when Julia Gillard realised she was struggling but didn't quite know what to do about it, nor did her campaign team. In part, that's where Labor is again right now. And to get through it and to put one very bad day behind them, they've got to resolve this fundamental question. Is it just that the leader was poorly prepped for his press conference on Monday, or is it the campaign strategy that's wrong and that the leader's not up to it? As an opposition leader's chief of staff, I can tell you exactly what we did in 2010 and 2013, and in the process took a first-term Labor government to minority status before a thumping landslide win. We worked out exactly what we thought was wrong with the then Gillard and Rudd governments and exactly what we were going to do differently. You might even be able to remember it. Stop the boats, scrap the taxes, fix the budget and build the roads of the 21st century. It was what we were going to do if elected, but it also mirrored what Labor was doing wrong. It was both a positive and a negative at the same time. And it was simple and direct, designed to cut through, to be remembered and critically to mean something to voters in marginal seats that make or break government. I suppose it's a backhanded compliment to the Morrison government that Labor strategists don't really attack its policies, except perhaps around the edges, but even then it's mostly too little too late. Instead, they just attack the character of the Prime Minister himself. For Labor, it's a rerun of Kevin 07, even down to complaints that the government's spending too much. Just as Kevin Rudd campaigned as a younger, fresher version of John Howard, Anthony Albanese is campaigning for safe change, where you get a different Prime Minister, he says, but not much else. Now, there are two big problems with this strategy. The first, Albanese's no Rudd. There's nothing like the excitement that Rudd could then generate and the momentum that delivered, which drove Labor's majority win. And second, no one's forgotten that Rudd turned out to be the great pretender, the fiscal conservative who promptly then wrecked the budget. And if you want to be safe change, you've got to be on top of your brief, which has to be still Albanese's biggest problem. Today, he struggled to explain how his urgent care clinics were any different from Rudd's failed GP super clinics and how he could create 50 of them with just $135 million.
Is this not just a reheat of Kevin Rudd's super clinics?
No,
65 were promised, only 33 were ever delivered. Is this another hollow promise?
No, it's not. This is a very different promise and a very different commitment. This is something aimed at removing pressure off ED departments.
And as so many of you know from your own experience, there are already big bulk billing clinics open long hours in many parts of most cities. So what's the real problem Labor's trying to solve? It wasn't much more than a naked try-on to open up another Medicare front, which most commentators agree today fell flat. Labor's dilemma is it's hard to demand voters change the government, but then say you're not going to change much if you get there. And having had 3 years to think about it, Labor should have more on offer. A clear sign that small target strategies don't work when your leader's made himself a big target. And the Greens too, well, they haven't helped. Today they're at the National Press Club saying that their main objective was to defeat the Morrison government because that just makes the public fear a Labor Green hidden agenda. There was this too.
You said in the speech that wages growth wasn't going particularly well. What's the current WPI?
Well, Google it, mate. I mean, like, I am sick. If you want to know why people are turning off politics,
And this.
we should be having a debate, if we're having a debate at all in this country, about how to support them, but trans rights are non-negotiable for the Greens, and that is crystal clear. As to your question about what changes there could be made, there is a need in this country to include gender-affirming surgery in Medicare. That is one thing that would make a big difference.
This is why a hung parliament with the Greens holding the balance of power again scares the very people Labor need to attract in order to win. Out on the hustings, the PM made yet another big spending announcement, this time $250 million to keep our last two fuel refineries open. The same two fuel refineries that neither of the two major parties that produce the fuel want us to use for much longer. All the way into electric cars, but we're propping them up anyway. Fair enough. But it would be good to have a clear and well-articulated rationale for all the various spending measures from the government, and an argument for why the small government Liberals have now become the party of big government. Labor is struggling, there's no doubt about it, but that shouldn't let the government off the hook either. At the very least, the government needs some big picture policies that signal to the electorate that they haven't lost their conservative values or their budget principles.